Thank you, Chairman Scott, and thank you for holding a hearing on this incredibly important issue to our state, which of course is why we saw Senator Grassley here earlier, and I'm so grateful to have my fellow Iowan here, Secretary Vilsack. I want to thank Senator Grassley for testifying and raising the need for reform in the cattle industry. I've actually worked with the senator and led the introduction of his 5014 bill in the House last year, and agree that we absolutely need a compromise that unites the industry, but also works for Iowa's independent cattle producers. And thank you, Secretary Vilsack, for joining us to discuss this important issue as well. You of course know I was proud to be standing next to you in Council Bluffs this summer when you announced the USDA's effort to expand processing capacity with $500 million provided by Congress in the American Rescue Plan. And we all know that those resources are so desperately needed because I constantly hear from Iowa producers about the significant consolidation in the industry and the increasing price spread, as well as the lack of competition in the cash market. You and I both have heard from local producer who had been selling his cattle at a loss while his packer was making a significant profit. That we talked about that in Council Bluffs. And unfortunately, that's not an isolated incident. In fact, at one point during the pandemic, cattle prices had declined by 18%, while boxed beef prices went up by 80%. So what we're seeing, of course, is producers being paid less, consumers are paying more, but the packers control over 80% of the market and are making significant profits. And this is absolutely not right and not good for our country, and certainly not good for Iowa's 3rd district. So we need more locally owned processing capacity to help with this issue. So Secretary Vilsack, I know your department is reviewing comments from the request for information for the new program to expand this capacity. However, I'm a bit concerned that these new resources could ultimately benefit the large packers if they're allowed to purchase their competition and retain their market power. The folks that you and I met with in Council Bluff, Cattlemen's Heritage, raised this issue in a public comment to the USDA and suggested that if an entity receives public funding for this program, that they can't sell to the Big Four within 25, if they sell with it to the Big Four within 25 years, then they have to pay back 100%. So I'm wondering if you share this concern, and if so, how can the USDA implement this program that assures that we can address this issue?
Congressman, I don't want to presuppose what the process that we're currently going through in analyzing these comments will result in. But I would say that as a former governor, I do understand and appreciate the notion of clawback. As you well know, with economic development programs, when industry receives a grant or a forgivable loan or whatever it might be based on certain representations concerning job growth, if they don't meet those representations, they don't meet those goals, they are required to pay all or a portion of what they receive from the state back. You know, I think we have to structure the program in a way that we can justify to taxpayers that their resources have been used in a thoughtful and appropriate way. And I would certainly hope that whatever structure we put together would be able to meet that standard and continue to meet that standard.
Okay, well, great. And obviously, I know you're taking this to heart. You heard the words that Cattlemen said, and we certainly want to help those industries here in our state. So thank you for that. Now I want to turn to African swine fever, which of course is of great concern to producers in our state of Iowa who lead in hog production. As you know, my colleagues and I recently wrote to you requesting that you leverage every single available authority in the USDA to fight against this deadly animal disease. So thank you, first and foremost, for your recent announcement that you would do just that and try and make significant investments, will make significant investments, I should say, in ASF from spreading to the U.S. But I noticed in the announcement, it looks like most of the funding will be concentrating about containing ASF in the Caribbean and then heightening the surveillance there. Can you clarify then how these funds will be allocated? And does the department have remaining needs for resources here at home to prepare for an emergency if ASF were to hit our shores? And finally, is our prevention infrastructure like the National Veterinary Stockpile adequately equipped to handle such an outbreak?
Well, it's important for us to minimize and to eliminate the risk at its source, which is why we're working with the Dominican Republic and the Haitians to address the issue as it exists in their countries today, and to provide them assistance and help, both technical assistance and financial assistance, to do the right job in minimizing and ultimately eliminating the risk in those two countries. We've also asked for OIE to establish a protective zone around Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands so that we can, so that there will be no imports coming in from those two areas into the mainland of the U.S. OIE's never had an application for protective zone protection, so they're going to take a little time to look at our application, but we're moving forward on that. We are shoring up and beefing up our surveillance, our detection systems. I think we are in place with the systems that we have in place. Should, God forbid, this happen, that we would be able to identify it quickly, we would be able to eradicate it quickly, we would be able to contain the damage to protect a state or a region of the country. We will do everything we possibly can to make sure this doesn't get to our shores and to be able to respond as quickly as possible should it get to our shores.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There's no vaccine yet, so it's not like we can stockpile vaccine, but we obviously, as I said earlier, we're working on the development of a vaccine and hope to get that as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.